Avery, whose show is this? And we're live. Welcome, everybody, here to the Lakers Lounge podcast. I'm Anthony Irwin, Senior Lakers Insider for Clutch Points. And today on the show, not joined by anybody, but we do have plenty to talk about. We have updates from practice today, day 2 of training camp, where LeBron was still limited. I somehow missed a detail about Marcus Smart. So we'll talk about that. And the impact on the Lakers thereof. Maxi Kleber apparently sustained a quad injury and requires an MRI. So I guess we now have to keep an eye out for that. And then JJ Redick was asked after the game about some of about the guard rotation, and in it offered up what he called locks for the rotation, which was certainly interesting. So we'll talk about that as well. And then obviously over the course of the show, I just want to make sure I have that quote pulled up about there we go. This is from Medina. About the JJ Redick's response about the guards. So we'll have that as well for you. And then, yeah, like I was saying, if you guys have any questions, hit me with them over the course of the show, and I'll try to get to them at the end of it. Quick reminder, please do hit subscribe wherever it is that you find your podcasts. If you guys are listening that way, if you guys are watching right now on YouTube, head on over to you. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the like button. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. And hit me with comments. The more comments I get, the better. And I promise I'll get better at responding to them. And then also, if you guys are watching on Twitter right now, head on over to youtube.com/@LakersFound Lakers Lounge to find the show there. Quick update. I asked you guys yesterday about putting lowdowns here on the YouTube page. And then I asked some people who I trust on these matters, including my bosses, and the response was overwhelming. Everybody thinks that I should put lowdowns on the YouTube page, so we will be doing that. For those who just listen to this or just take in my content here on YouTube, lowdowns are like 7 to 10 minute snapshot podcasts. Where I really quickly run through the day's stories, no additional context, no additional analysis on those things. But it's if you're in a rush and you just want to know what's going on with the Lakers, that's what those shows exist for. So I'll create a separate playlist and a separate section here for those lowdowns. And those will fill up really quickly because they run every single day. So thanks for the input on that front. All right. Without any further ado, let's get into the updates from day 2 of the Lakers training camp. So we'll start with LeBron, who was once again limited with that glute nerve issue. I guess he has a pain in the butt, apparently, and it is not just me. But this is now the second day, right, that he is limited in this way, and hasn't participated in team-wide activities. And I'm not freaking out over 2 days of practice over the course of an entire season. However, this is one of the few times when you'll be able to get consecutive practices in, and that LeBron would be able to get these kinds of climate controlled reps in with him and Luka and Austin. And one of the explanations that have been offered up for why the Lakers offense was maybe a little too rudimentary last year was that the Lakers, as they say, built the plane mid-flight. And look, the reason I call them explanations and not excuses is because that is factually correct. You traded for a cornerstone type player in Luka in the middle of a season, and building a completely new system that fits his usage rate and LeBron's usage rate and Austin's usage rate into that system. That's just impossible. That was never going to happen in the middle of a season. That's the kind of thing that you would implement over the course of a whole off season and training camp, preseason, and then over the course of 82 games. And then you hope to have gotten enough reps by the time you get to the playoffs that everybody is kind of confident in what they're doing. And this is a very key part of that equation where you have these stretches of practices where you can really work on things and, hit pause when it's time to hit pause, and just learn the instincts and learn your own instincts as LeBron works off of Luka, and exists as more of a finisher or system compounder than the system itself. So hopefully we'll get LeBron out there relatively soon so that they can get those reps and ideally get a few reps in before the first preseason game of the slate on Friday. Now, it doesn't appear that that's going to happen with Marcus Smart, right? He's out till next week. We'll talk about that in a second. But yeah, with LeBron, I'm hoping, and I know that they're going to be very cautious and that, the playoffs matter a hell of a lot more than practices in early October. But you do need the reps. At some point, you do need to get out there and you do need the reps. And let's hope that LeBron gets out there and gets those reps as soon as he can safely. The next bit is it's an update of sorts on Marcus Smart. And it's only an update because I somehow missed this yesterday. But he apparently is in what the Lakers call return to play protocols. He's in there. Gabe is in there. Thero's in there. LeBron is already in there. And Smart, as he deals with that Achilles tendinopathy, is hoping to participate in training camp next week, which would put him out of the first preseason game that the Lakers are going to be playing. And the fact that Smart is already dealing with something that is going to keep him out for at least a few days right at the onset of training camp, and that never being mentioned at any point in media day is kind of a bummer. The other thing working against the Lakers here in this spot is their lack of transparency on injuries in the past. Those of you who have been paying attention to my content for a while now know how frustrated I get because the Lakers, they try to, paint this rosy picture of what's going on here with their guys. But because oftentimes that rosy picture isn't based in reality, those guys just wind up getting the fans frustrated at them for not returning when, the Lakers would appear to think that they would return. So I'm not saying that that is definitely going on here with Marcus Smart. And I'm not saying that that is going to be the case moving forward as the Lakers move into a new era with the Mark Walter leadership. But at the end of the day, we can only be lied to so many times, and the Lakers have lied to us plenty. And so once you can try to tell me how it's really, really nice outside, but if you've told me it's really, really nice outside and I've stepped out into some kind of a blizzard a few times, I'm going to grab my jacket the next time you tell me to come on out. It's like, it sucks to have to be this cynical, but we have to. So hopefully they've turned a page on those policies and that modus operandi. But I'm hoping that Marcus Smart is available to go early next week, as they're kind of talking about. And we can put all of this behind us. LeBron gets back out there again next week as well. But we've had plenty of guys who Lakers say, "Oh yeah, we'll reevaluate him in a week or so, and we'll have some good news for you then." And then the good news never comes, and Kendrick Nunn never plays, or Jared Vanderbilt misses the whole season. Christian Wood misses a whole season, and the whole time we're just like, oh, okay, but all right, you've said this, but I guess not. So here we are. All right. The next injury, unfortunately, there's a lot of this going on. Injuries, that is. Maxi Kleber apparently had to leave practice after he sustained some kind of a quad injury that he apparently is going to get an MRI on. Now, the Lakers might just be super cautious on this front, and he might not actually need an MRI, but they're going to run one anyway. That's possible. But seeing as Maxi Kleber has been dealing with injuries basically for the last few years running, this is one of those situations where I do think the MRI is smart to get and might actually indicate that he's dealing with an actual strain. I did see Dr. Jeffries out there on Twitter saying that if it is a strain, a grade 1 would take 1 to 2 weeks to get back from. And if it's a grade 2, it'll take 3 to 4 weeks. And then if it was anything worse than a grade 2 strain, the Lakers would have at least mentioned that. I can give them that much credit. But that's less than ideal on Maxi. But also not all that surprising because this guy has not been able to stay on the court basically at all consistently over the course of the last few years of his career. So hopefully he's okay. Hopefully that MRI comes back clean. And the Lakers are just operating across their injured list with an abundance of caution this early in the training camp and in the season or in the NBA calendar year. So hopefully that's the case. And again, like I just said with Smart, we can get into these guys returning next week or so, and we can forget that these first couple of days happened and all of these injury updates came the way that they did. But given how injuries have kind of played out for the Lakers the last few years, we do have to kind of grin and bear it when it comes to outlooks on these things, and we also have to remain kind of cynical when it comes to what the Lakers are saying might or might not be going on. All right, let's talk about basketball now. JJ Redick, in holding court after practice today, apparently addressed what's going to go into the Lakers guard rotations. And this is what he had to say. This is via Mark Medina. Quote, health. That's the biggest thing. You can sort of look at a team on paper, but until they're on the court, you don't really know. I think it starts there. We're going to play Austin and Luka, I think. They're going to play. Marcus is going to get healthy. Gabe, I think, is trending in the right direction. Jake will play, and the rest of it is a competition, end quote. So that would that would make those guys that he mentioned, if you're listing guys as part of a rotation, and then everybody else is going to be competing outside of those guys, that makes those guys locks. So we'll go through that list one more time. Obviously, Austin and Luka, duh. Marcus, duh. Gabe as a lock, okay. And then Jake LaRavia being a lock. I'll say this about Jake. I've been kind of reluctant to hype him up too much because the sample size with him over the course of his career is just so small. But I will say this. There's a lot of noise about this kid. From people who have been there in practice and stuff like that. They're the Lakers, I guess sources that I've kind of spoken to who are close to that situation, they're all saying that like Jake looks really good and they like his versatility, especially defensively. He actually held a presser, or not a presser, but he was in a scrum after practice today And he actually said that he's going to be defending 1 through 4 this year. And that kind of goes with what I'm talking about here, where the Lakers are going to be trying to find ways to get him on the court, and they're going to lean on his defensive versatility as the means to utilize that, that versatility, or as the means to get him on the court, and as the means to get his shot out there, and use him as a skill compounder. So yeah, I would. I've been a little cautious on this front. I haven't wanted to hype him up until we actually got him out there in training camp, and we actually heard from some people there in training camp. Off-season stuff is kind of tricky because players can look great. I was a really good scrimmager, and I was a really good pickup player. But sometimes when it got into like a more organized setting, that wasn't always my strong suit. Cam Reddish is kind of like that, right? He's a really, really, really good one-on-one player, and a really, really, really good scrimmager. But for whatever reason, that didn't always translate to organized team basketball. And in this case, I've been hearing that Jake LaRavia looked really good in those like pre-camp, off-season, opportunities. And apparently that has carried forward into training camp. And now we'll see what that looks like in preseason games and then regular season games and stuff like that. But Jake LaRavia, I think we can probably start kind of pressing, like cautiously pressing the hype button, not full on like, but like, hit the button every so often, and make that noise a little bit louder. Gabe was interesting though, when it comes to rotation locks here. Now, I think that has a lot to do with what Marcus is dealing with, in that he's not available. Now, Gabe also unfortunately isn't available either. But look, I could see why especially young coach would like a Gabe Vincent and would be trying to find ways to utilize a Gabe Vincent. He's, point guards just think about the game in a certain way that helps head coaches. And Gabe Vincent is very much your traditional point guard who thinks about the game that way. So I can understand why JJ would be looking for ways to get him on the court. But if you have Austin and you have Marcus and you have Luka, who's going to have the ball in his hands a ton, like an undersized guy like Gabe, there's some overlap there. And like, if you're playing a lineup with Gabe and Austin, when you have as much size and versatility as the Lakers have, that feels like a missed opportunity. Now you could play Gabe alongside Luka, and that might help with your foot speed, especially at the point of attack. That would make a little bit of sense. I could kind of understand that. But like a Marcus and Gabe lineup would be too small given the options that the Lakers have. Maybe Gabe and LaRavia at the 2 type lineups with like Vanderbilt and Rui out there as your other wings, and Jackson as the bench center there. Maybe that's a group that gets a little bit of run together. I could kind of see that maybe, but yeah, overall, Gabe being considered a lock this early, I think is kind of telling. And I think it's the kind of thing that like a coach. Now look, I also want to say this: locks on October 1st are just not very important. Like I don't want to make too big a deal out of this and about the this list that he compiled, because end of the day, this could change after Friday. This could change after Sunday, right? And let alone in the weeks to follow throughout training camp, or even the weeks and months that will follow throughout the regular season. But I guess my point is, I'm not surprised that this is how JJ would feel about the guard rotation going into training camp. Gabe is very much the kind of player that a head coach would like to lean on and be an extension of his kind of personality and the concepts and all that stuff that they want to run. Gabe can be that for JJ Redick out there in ways that players who don't think about the game as traditional point guards often can't. So it doesn't surprise me that Gabe is considered a lock right now. From this specific perspective, it does surprise me a little bit just given the personnel on the team, but it also wouldn't surprise me if Gabe isn't a lock by the time we get to like Christmas. The other bit on that guard rotation and locks and rotation conversation is Dalton is kind of awkward, right? Like, you're gonna play Austin, gonna play Luka, gonna play Marcus, gonna play Gabe, and Jake is gonna be out there. The rest of it is a competition. Is that between Dalton and Bronny? Dalton's lumped in there with Bronny. He was a first-round pick last year. That's rough. It's tough times for Dalton Knecht there, especially given that he is somewhat unique in his skill set, at least theoretically, right? Where you look at guys that are his size who can at least theoretically space the floor the way that he can, who can also finish at the rim the way that he can, and athletically at least has like the athletic tools to maybe defend someday. But look, I'm going to try to say this as nice as I possibly can. But one of the things that I heard a lot of over the course of last year in the regular, throughout the season and on into the playoffs and so on and so forth. And then that noise continued into the off season and continued into training camp and all of that stuff. But one of the things I heard quite a bit about Dalton is he is just not where he needs to be when it comes to basketball IQ. That is a major, major concern with him. And it's probably the reason he fell in the draft the way that he did. Now, the Lakers looked at him and they saw those physical tools. They saw that shot. They saw the production from his last year there at Tennessee. And they were like, screw it, we'll give it a go because we're going to take the best player available. But as the year went along and as the mental aspect of the game grows in importance over the course of the season, I don't think it's a coincidence that like as everybody kind of started figuring out scouting reports, those scouting reports became more important and execution became more important. This is like honestly why Cam Reddish, looks so great in October and early November is because at that point the game is a lot more instinctual. And then by the time you get into, December and January and February and so on and so forth, the game becomes a lot more strategic. And I think that's why those kinds of players, that those individually talented players look really good early in the year and then kind of fall off over the course of the year. And I think that's kind of what that's the group that I would put Dalton Knecht into. He's a very individually talented player and he works his ass off to be such. But unfortunately, he is just severely limited when it comes to basketball IQ. And I'm not going to get into too many details here, but there are some stories about him in practice where it's like, it's just they're hoping that at some point he gets it. But the fact that he's already not lumped in with the guys who are considered rotation locks, heading into training camp, dude, JJ Redick listed 2 injured guards as rotation locks right now while talking about injuries and didn't consider Dalton Knecht a lock who is healthy. Dalton is healthy. So yeah, that's a bit of a bummer. I'm hoping it doesn't turn out like this, but that first round pick is looking pretty rough. The last couple of first round picks that the Lakers have made are looking pretty rough. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and dive into some of your guys's comments. We do have a super comment, and by the way, like I have. Ooh man, Miles just woke up, so I probably have another 15 minutes or so, maybe 20, if I can stretch it. Um, maybe 20. No, maybe 20 to 25 more minutes here. So hit me with your questions and I will get to as many of them as I possibly can, starting with this super comment and starting with the sounder. Always the best part of my day. All right, Amon Brar. Anthony, thoughts on DFS being out possibly due to the ankle injury he had last year? Also, can we get more details on Nick Smith Jr.? All right, so I'll start with the Dorian thing. Remember back when he signed with Houston in the first place, I reported that Rob Pelinka, word was out there that Rob Pelinka had let it slip that Dorian's ankle wasn't 100% and that time was going to be needed to get him back out onto the court. So this doesn't exactly surprise me that Dorian is still nursing that ankle injury. Feet, dude, foot problems are tough. Ankle problems are tough. There are just so many tendons and ligaments and small bones and there's not a ton of blood flow to certain parts of the feet and ankle area. And it makes it really difficult for guys to get back from stuff. That Kendrick Nunn's bone bruise I think was in his knee, but yeah, like the feet and ankle injuries, foot problems ended Bill Walton's career short. It's just I have some feet problems that just completely sapped any athleticism I ever had. That these long-standing foot problems. So it's just rough. So yeah, my thoughts on Dorian still being out is that I'm not necessarily surprised. Rob making the mistake of letting that information out there doesn't change the information. It still remains what it is. It's the facts are the facts in this case, and Dorian is still nursing that foot or ankle issue. Bummer. I hope that he's able to recover. I really like Dorian personally. Like I only covered a handful of Lakers games last year. And I know when he was when the Lakers played in Dallas, he had his kids like running around in the locker room. And I just, he was a really funny dad. And is a really funny dude, basically just there with the guys in the locker room, and they're gonna miss his voice this year. So I'm pulling for him to get and stay healthy. Unfortunately, I wasn't all that surprised to hear about this. Speaking of kids, there are mine. Anyway, sorry everybody. So the second part of that question, also, could we get more details on Nick Smith Jr.? All right, so he's a former first round draft pick. Only like a year ago, he's coming off of his second year. He's a definitely more offense leaning, not much of a defender is Nick Smith Jr. He's a clutch client, and the Lakers do like their clutch reclamation projects, so that trend is continuing. But the fact that the Lakers were able to get him on a two-way contract, they essentially have two bona fide NBA players on two ways right now. You have Nick Smith Jr. and then you have Christian Koloko. Koloko, again, I remind people, started games for a Toronto Raptors team that eventually made it to the playoffs. So, like, he was off to a really good start in his career, and then he had that blood clot issue. And the fact that the Lakers were able to keep him on a two-way is honestly kind of miraculous. Like, that was a huge development over the offseason. It wouldn't surprise me if we get to the end of the year and Koloko separates himself from Jackson Hayes. I really believe in Koloko, especially defensively. as it pertains to Nick Smith Jr., again, Rob loves to gamble on pedigree. He and Nick Smith has plenty of that. Rob loves his scoring guards, and Nick Smith is definitely that. But look, like you already look at the Lakers guard rotation. Marcus Smart is already dealing with something. Gabe Vincent is already dealing with something. And if the season were to start tomorrow, now all of a sudden you're looking at the guard rotation and you're like, shit, Austin, Luka, Dalton isn't really trusted by the coaching staff. Jake will get his minutes. Does that leave Bronny? Are you willing to throw him out there into the fire in year 2 this quickly? Nick Smith Jr. has more experience in the NBA than Bronny does. So Nick Smith Jr. would probably get some minutes if the season were to start tomorrow. Now, he's I like the idea of having some scoring punch at the guard position, especially for a two-way player. And for the Lakers, it doesn't cost you anything to take a flyer on this kid. So, yeah, I like the pickup. I think it's an interesting pickup. Now, given the roster makeup, I don't know how much they need another smaller guard, but again, because of the injuries that these guys have had, right? Vincent missed significant time a year ago, not last year, but the year before that. And then you have Marcus Smart, who has been in and out of the lineups everywhere he's been the last couple of years. So, having an NBA level guard, and also the other thing too, and I'll finish this point. Having an NBA level guard, guy who played NBA minutes last year as a two-way, you can get 50 games from that guy. I think that's a solid value bet. And the other thing too, I like betting on pedigree, especially when that pedigree is coming from an organization like the Charlotte Hornets, where they just don't have their shit together over there. And if he was talented enough to get drafted when he was, then and they just weren't able to develop that talent. That happens all the time. And the comparison I would make here with Mark Walter, eventually taking over, is this is what the Dodgers do all the time. They go out and they find these guys who have pedigree and they put them in their development system and they see what comes out on the other end. And sometimes you have Chris Taylor's or Max Muncy's or Kike Hernandez's, or Blake Trinan's, or so on and so forth. And then every so often it just doesn't pan out. And a player who had that pedigree just shouldn't have been drafted when he was. So in this case, the Lakers, we know that they're eventually going to invest more into their development systems and programs, and we know that they're going to try to find value with these kinds of high pedigree players who find themselves on the outs in their various situations. And we'll see, what happens here with Nick Smith. I really like the gamble. It's not really a gamble if he's on a two-way contract. I'd be nervous if the Lakers would have cut somebody or made some, roster, cap space or roster spot clearing move to go out and bring in this guy, but they didn't even have to do that. He's on a two-way. I really, really like the move. Let's see if we have any other comments here. All right. So Omar's Hall, I'm really nervous about Smart. I don't know, man. I think he's washed. I'm hoping I'm wrong. I'm not gonna freak out too early here on the Smart front. What I will say though, as it pertains to Smart, is I didn't hear the best things in those pre-training camp team festivities, and I know he's trying to work himself back into shape, and I know that that's something that he and Luka talked about when Lucas sold him on coming to the Lakers. But like one thing that wouldn't surprise me as it pertains to Smart is because of how important he is to the defensive identity and the kind of overall identity that the Lakers want to play with this year. I think they will be looking for reinforcements with his skill set, just in case these injuries linger and are legit, and he is never able to turn it fully around. I also would say, as it pertains to Smart, that yeah, I'll go out on the limb. I had been hearing coming into training camp that Rui was probably it was Rui's starting gig to lose coming into camp. Smart now missing the first week in the first preseason game probably makes Rui a lock to start. Maybe not a lock, but it gives him a significant advantage when it comes to the likelihood of starting. So the likeliest, I would say, starting group that we'll see on opening night will probably be, I think, Luka, Austin, Rui, LeBron, and Ayton. And, part of it too is that the Lakers are going to, again, operate with a ton of caution as it pertains to Smart to try to keep him healthy and have him available as you get into the into the postseason, later into the season, and then obviously into the playoffs. And if you start Smart and he's playing 30-ish minutes a night, that puts him at significantly higher risk than if you bring him off of the bench and he's playing closer to 20 to 25 minutes a night. Now, I do think JJ Redick was singing Jared Vanderbilt's praises after practice today. And it'll be interesting to see how the rotation works, because I don't really like the idea of too many lineups with Smart and Vando out there, especially if that group is coming off of the bench and it also has Jackson Hayes. Like, whoever else is out on the court is going to have like zero space basically to work with. So I am curious to see like what the Lakers do as far as like when Smart enters the game and then when Vando enters the game, and who those guys come in for, so that the Lakers can maintain a certain level of spacing. We know how important JJ Redick views spacing as. So yeah, this is certainly something to keep an eye on. But yeah, I think based on everything I heard coming into training camp, and then given that Marcus Smart is now going to miss basically the first week of training camp, I think it's pretty clearly Rui's starting gig to lose. Let's see. I think that will probably do it here for, yeah, I think that will do it. So, yeah, a little shorter show today. I will also record a lowdown that, again, will appear here on YouTube. So make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel to make sure you don't miss that. I'm going to break this up, obviously, is the way that I normally do. And yeah, have a great rest of your day. Make somebody else's. And I will talk to you in a little bit. Go Dodgers. Please, please, please win. Just nice, easy win. And bullpen, get your shit together.